Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Now I have a very special video for you all today. I have two scary Hmong funeral home stories to share with you all. Now for those of you who have gone to traditional Hmong funerals, I'm sure you can agree that they can be a little bit unsettling sometimes. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, things can follow you home. Thank you to the viewers who submitted these stories. If you would like to have your stories featured on this channel, remember to send them to the email listed in the description below. And remember to leave a like and subscribe. That way I can get my adult beverages. And without further ado, enjoy the show. I was around 15 or 16 years old when this happened. It was during the early 2000s, back when most Hmong funerals in our area were still very long, loud, and crowded. It was for my dad's uncle. Even though I did not know him well, my parents made all of us go to pay our respects. The funeral home was an older building. It had a main room where the casket was, then there was a hallway on the left that led to a small kitchen area and a few side rooms. In the back, there was a storage room where people put extra chairs, cases of waters, and paper plates and all that stuff. There was also a hallway that led to the bathrooms, but that hallway looked darker than the rest of the building. Even during the day, it felt like the lights were not bright enough. That night, my parents told us that we were not staying too late. My dad had work the next morning, and my mom did not like keeping us out past midnight. But like always, saying we were leaving soon and actually leaving soon were two different things. Someone would ask my dad to help with something, and then someone else would ask my mom to pack food, and then an auntie would come over and talk for another 30 minutes. By around 11, I was already tired. My younger sister was sleeping with her head on my mom's lap, and my older sister was sitting on a chair with her arms crossed, mad that we were still there. I asked my dad if we could go sit in the van, but he said no because it was too cold outside and he did not want us to keep turning the van on and off. So I wandered toward the side hallway, just to get away from all the loud noise. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful or anything. I was just bored and my head was just pounding from all the noise. I went near the hallway where the bathrooms were, but I did not go all the way down because it looked too dark. There was this one light above the hallway that kept buzzing. It did not flicker like a movie. It was more like it was struggling, like it was on, but not fully on. As I was standing there, I just heard someone whisper my name. It was not loud. It was just enough for me to hear it. At first, I thought it was one of my cousins messing with me. I turned around and looked back toward the main room. There were people everywhere, but no one was looking at me. I looked down the hallway, and I did not see anyone there either. I told myself it was just probably someone saying a name that sounded like mine. You know how funerals are, everyone's talking at the same time, and sometimes sounds travel weird in those old buildings, so I did not think too much about it. A little later, I heard it again. This time, it came from the dark hallway. I stood there for a second, and the hairs on my arms stood up. I did not run, I just walked backward, slowly, until I was back where the people were. I remember feeling embarrassed because I was old enough to know better than to scare myself, but at the same time, I knew that what I heard was definitely someone saying my name. I sat next to my older sister and told her, "Hey, I think someone's calling me from the bathroom hallway." She looked at me and rolled her eyes. She said, "Stop trying to scare me." I told her that I was serious, but she did not care. She said that if I was scared, then to sit down and stop walking around. So that's what I did. Maybe about 30 minutes passed after that. My mom asked me to help carry some of the bags of food to the van. We were finally leaving, and my dad was still inside saying goodbye to people, so my mom gave me the keys and told me to go and unlock the doors. I carried one bag, and my older sister carried the other. My younger sister was awake by then and walking behind us with a blanket around her shoulders. When we were walking outside, the parking lot was quiet. There were still cars, but most people were inside. The air was cold, and you could hear the distant sound of the drums from inside the funeral home. It sounded muffled through the walls. We put the food in the back of the van, and my older sister went back inside first because she forgot her purse. My younger sister and I stayed outside for a few seconds because I was trying to rearrange the bag so that they would not spill. That was when we heard someone coughing. It came from behind the van. It was an old man's cough, not like a normal cough, but that deep, dry cough old people sometimes have when their throat is bad. I thought that maybe it was one of those uncles just standing there smoking, so I turned around and looked at the back of the van, but nobody was there. My younger sister asked me, "Did you hear that?" I said yeah, but I told her that maybe someone was on the other side of the parking lot. I did not want to scare her, and she was only 11 at the time. We went back inside, and I did not tell anyone else. When we got home that night, it was already close to 1 in the morning. Everyone was tired. My mom put the food in the fridge, my dad changed the clothes, and my sisters went to their rooms. I slept in the basement at that time. My room was down there next to the laundry area. It was not a finished basement like a nice house basement. It was one of those older basements with concrete floors, storage shelves, and a washer and dryer in the corner. My dad had put up some cheap drywalls to make a bedroom for me. I did not like sleeping down there, but I was used to it. That night, after I turned off the light, I remember smelling something weird. A few minutes later, I heard coughing again. The same old man's cough from the parking lot. It came from the laundry area. I sat up right away. I did not move for a while. I just listened. The basement was quiet, and I could hear the furnace kicking on. I told myself that maybe my dad had come downstairs to check on something, so I called out, "Dad?" Nobody answered. Then I heard something tap against the washer. One tap, then another. I got up and turned on my lamp. I opened my bedroom door and looked toward the laundry area. Nothing was there. The washer and dryer were normal, the storage shelves were normal, and the basement door was closed, so I quickly closed my door and went back to bed with my lamp on. The next morning, I told my mom about what happened. She did not look surprised or worried at all. It seemed like she also didn't want to talk too much about it. She just said that maybe I was too tired from the funeral. I knew she was trying to make me feel better, but my younger sister heard the cough too in the parking lot, so I knew that it was just not me. For the next few days, small things started happening around the house. The first thing was the smell. Usually, after every night, after everyone went to bed, that same cigarette-like smell would come back. It was the strongest in the hallway near the kitchen and by the basement stairs. My dad smoked once in a while, but he always smoked outside. This smell was a little different. I don't know how to explain it, but maybe it was a different brand of cigarettes from my dad's. My mom started opening windows during the day, even though it was cold. She said that the house smelled weird. She told my dad to stop smoking so that way the smoke wouldn't travel inside with him. My dad didn't listen. He said that he was the man of the house and he can smoke wherever and whenever he wants. Now, another thing that I remember that happened during this time was the sound of someone walking around at night. Our house was a split-level house, so you could hear everything. If someone walked upstairs, you could hear the floor creak from the basement. If someone walked into the kitchen, you could hear the cabinet handles move. I don't remember when it started to happen, but I remember it was one time I thought it was my mom getting water. But then the walking went from the kitchen to the living room, then stopped right at the top of the basement stairs. I stared at my bedroom door. Nothing happened. Then the stair creaked. Just one step, then another. I remember pulling my blanket up to my chin and telling myself that it was just the house settling. But the footsteps came down 3 steps, then stopped. I waited for my dad to call my name or come down, but nobody did. After maybe a minute, the footsteps went back up. The next morning, I asked everyone if they came downstairs. My mom said no, and my dad said no, and my sisters said that they were asleep. Then my younger sister got quiet. She said that she heard it too. My dad told us that it was just probably the house, but I could see his face. He did not fully believe what he was saying. About, I think, a week after the funeral, my older sister started to get bothered too. She had a room upstairs, across from my parents' room. She said that every night around 3, she would wake up because she felt like someone was standing near her closet. She never saw anything clearly. She just said that the corner of her room looked darker than the rest of the room. She also said that she could hear breathing. My mom told her to pray and to not be scared. I think one of the scariest parts that happened was a few weeks or maybe close to a few months after the funeral. It was on a school night. I was sleeping in the basement again, and I woke up because my room was cold. I remember this very clearly because I had a small digital clock near my bed, and it said 3:17 a.m. I tried to turn to my side, but I could not move. At first, I thought my arms were asleep. Then I realized that my whole body was stuck. I could see my room because my lamp was still on, but I could not move my head. I could only look straight ahead. That was when I heard the coughing again. It was inside my room. I could feel my heart beating so hard that it felt like it was shaking my chest. I tried to call for my mom, but my mouth would not open. I tried to move my fingers, but nothing worked. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone standing near my door. It looked like an old man. I could not see his face clearly. I could only see the shape of his shoulders and head. He was standing still, facing me. I remember thinking, please don't come closer. But he did. He moved slowly, but I did not hear footsteps. It was more like he was already closer every time I blinked. The smell was getting so strong that I felt like I was back at the funeral home. Then he bent down near my face. I still could not see his features clearly. It was just kind of like darkness where his face should have been. But I heard him whisper. He whispered in Hmong. I don't understand completely what he was saying, but it sounded similar to one of those songs that they sing at the funeral home to guide the dead. Right after he finished, I was able to move. I jumped up so fast that I almost knocked my lamp over. The whole time I was in my room on my bed, awake, I was contemplating if I wanted to run upstairs to tell my parents about what happened. I just decided to not sleep at all and just to stay in my room. It was only around 3 o'clock after all. I just had to wait a few more hours before the sun finally rose and I could go back upstairs. Now, one thing that I want to mention was that the old man that I saw was a Hmong man, and he was wearing those clothes that they put on for the dead. I made sure it was 6 o'clock when I finally got up and ran up the stairs. I knocked on my parents' room and told them about what happened. My parents could see the look on my face that I was extremely afraid, and I had these dark bags under my eyes for not sleeping. I called in sick and stayed home from school that day. For the next couple of days, I slept on the floor of my parents' room. Another thing that I want to mention was my younger sister. One time, she said that while she was sleeping, she had a dream that we were back at the funeral home. She said an old man was standing in the hallway near the bathroom. He was looking at our family, but mostly at my dad. In the dream, he kept pointing at our van. My dad did not say much about all these things. He just told us to sleep upstairs from now on. After we got older, my dad also shared one of his experiences. He said that one time he walked to the basement door and opened it. The stairs were dark and the light switch was right next to the door, but before he turned it on, he heard the coughing come from the bottom of the stairs. My dad did not want to go downstairs and check out whatever it was, so he just slowly shut the door and pretended that nothing happened. Eventually, my mom begged my dad enough to get it checked out, so he called a shaman and had a ceremony performed at our house. My mom and dad didn't tell us about what happened during that time, but after we got older, they told us about the real story of why we had those experiences. My dad explained that the shaman told them that there was a spirit there of an old Hmong man. Now, after Hmong funerals, there are certain procedures that are needed to be done. One of them is called the spirit release procedure, or the Jobli. It seemed like this Hmong man and his family, for whatever reason, did not release his spirit after the funeral. So because of that, he lingered and decided to follow us home. Due to that, we had all these experiences. But the shaman was able to take care of that, and I do remember that after the ceremony was completed, we stopped having those strange paranormal experiences. After that, my parents kicked me out and I went back to sleep in my room in the basement. But ever since then, my family and I don't really like to go to funerals anymore because we don't want things to follow us home. We only go if it's really important or someone that's really close to us. And when we do go, we make sure that there are necessary protections to protect us from spirits that might follow us home. This story happened to my family about 6 or 7 years ago. I used to think that if something happened at a funeral home, it stayed at the funeral home. Maybe those places just felt heavy because people are sad there and there's a lot of emotions. You have people crying, there are drums, takeng being played, people running around, and elders talking about all sorts of things. So, of course, during that time, it's late at night and everybody's tired, and your mind starts to play tricks on you. That's how I used to think. The funeral was for my husband's relative. It was not someone close to me, but close enough where we had to attend all weekend. My husband was helping with the men outside, and I was helping the ladies with the food. We had our 2 kids with us during the day, but at night, my sister-in-law took them home so that they could sleep. I stayed with my husband because we lived only about 20 minutes away from the funeral home. The funeral home was not that big, but it had a lot of corners. The main room was where the casket and family were. On the other right side, there was a hallway that led to a little sitting area and then to the bathrooms. On the left side, there was a small room where some people rested if they were tired. The kitchen area was in the back, and that was where most of us women spent our time. Nothing strange happened the first day. It was tiring, but normal. The second night was when I first noticed something. It was almost midnight, and I was in the kitchen washing a large pot. Most of the people were still in the main room, so the kitchen was quiet. I could still hear the funeral music from the front, but it sounded far away. I remember I had my sleeves rolled up and my hands were in hot water. I thought I heard the sound of a woman crying. At first I didn't think anything of it because we were at a funeral. People cry at funerals. But this crying sounded close. It sounded like someone was sitting on the floor on the other side of the kitchen island. I looked over, but nobody was there. I turned off the water and listened. The crying stopped. I told myself that I was just tired. I had been there since morning and I had barely eaten, so I went back to washing the pot. Then the crying started again. This time, it came from the small resting room on the left side of the building. I wiped my hands and walked to the doorway. I did not go inside. I just looked. The light in the resting room was off, but the door was open halfway. I could see a few folded blankets on the chairs and some cases of water stacked against the wall. I looked inside and I remember mumbling to myself, wondering if someone was here. Then I heard a little knock from inside the room. Just one knock. I backed away and went to find my husband. I did not run because I did not want to look stupid in front of everyone, but I walked fast. When I told him, he looked tired and said that it was probably just one of the aunties crying in the hallway. I told him no, that it came from the room. He said that he would check after he finished helping, but he said that's a pretty normal thing for people to be crying, and for me to not worry. I knew that he was not trying to dismiss me, but that he was just busy and tired. About 10 minutes later, he came with me to check. We turned on the light and there was nobody there. The blankets were folded and the water cases were still there. Nothing looked weird. He said that maybe someone walked away before I came. I wanted to believe in that, so I did. Later that night, I was with my husband's auntie in the kitchen washing dishes after midnight. I asked her if she heard any sounds of people crying by themselves in the funeral home. She told me to not talk about those things like that and to just ignore it. I didn't know what she meant and I didn't ask, I just said okay. We went home at around 2 in the morning. I remember being so tired that I slept in my clothes. My husband showered and came to bed after me. I woke up around 4 because I heard the sound of someone crying. It was the same crying from the funeral home. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. Our room was dark, but I could see a little bit because of the streetlight outside. My husband was sleeping next to me. The crying sounded like it was coming from the hallway outside our bedroom. I shook my husband awake. He opened his eyes and whispered, "What?" I told him to listen. We both stayed quiet, and the crying stopped. He said that maybe it was one of the kids, so we got up and checked on their room. They were both sleeping. He checked the bathroom and the living room and the kitchen, and nothing. When he came back, he said that maybe I was just dreaming. I got annoyed because I knew that I was awake, but I didn't argue because I was just too tired. The next day, we went back to the funeral, and I tried not to think about what happened. During the day, everything felt normal again. There were people everywhere, and the building did not feel scary when it was full of voices. That night, at around 11, I went to the bathroom. I asked my sister-in-law to come with me because I didn't want to walk alone. She laughed at me, but she came anyways. When we were washing our hand, the bathroom light flickered, just once, and then it felt very cold. My sister-in-law looked at me through the mirror and said for me to hurry up. And that's when we both heard someone walking in the hallway outside the bathroom. It sounded like slow steps dragging across the carpet. We thought it was another woman coming to use the bathroom, so we waited. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. We waited for the door to open, but it didn't open. My sister-in-law grabbed my wrist. We waited for a few seconds, and then she opened the door fast. The hallway was empty. The two of us went back to the main room right away. My sister-in-law did not laugh at me anymore. After the burial, we thought that everything would go back to normal. The funeral was over, people went home, and everyone was tired. But things actually got a little bit more worse. For the next week, our house felt different. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like our house was just making much more noises than usual. Like there were sounds that felt like it was the pipes or just the house settling, but I just noticed the sounds in the house a lot more than usual. Another thing that we noticed was this smell of rot. The smell wasn't there all the time, but we would smell it once in a while. Like we would get a whiff of this rotten smell. At first, I thought that it was because we didn't take out the trash, or my husband said that maybe an animal died in the walls. But no matter what we did, and no matter how many air fresheners and air sprays we got, the smell just always came back somehow. But I think that one of the scarier things that I remember during this time was how my daughter started saying that there was a grandma in the hallway. My daughter was 5 years old at the time. She was not the type to make up scary things. She was actually the kind of kid that would cry if someone scared her. One morning, she would not come out of her room. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that the grandma was standing near the bathroom. I asked, "What grandma?" And she said that the grandma with the long white hair. I got chills all over my arms, but I stayed calm because I did not want to scare her. I asked if the grandma said anything, and she said no. She just looked sad. I told my husband, and he said that maybe she just had a very active imagination. But later that week, our son asked why someone was walking outside his door at night. He sounded like someone was wearing slippers and dragging one foot. That was when my husband stopped brushing it off. We talked to my husband's mom, my mother-in-law, and she listened quietly and asked if we had heard anything else at the funeral home. I told her that I heard crying in the kitchen, the knocks in the resting room, and that time when I was in the bathroom. She told us not to worry and that her and my father-in-law will come over one of these days to sweep the house with a peach branch to get rid of any evil spirits. They didn't come until the next month after because they were busy with the farmer's market. My mother-in-law and father-in-law showed up to our house with a peach branch and swept the entire house. They were sweeping all the rooms, sweeping the kitchen, underneath the chairs and tables, and telling that whatever spirit was there, that it did not belong there and that it had to leave. They also tied strings onto the wrists of my children to make sure that they don't have any nightmares or anything wrong with them. For a while, things were pretty good. We didn't have any more experiences and the house seemed normal. It was actually pretty good for a long time that we forgot all about those things. But obviously, it doesn't end there. I remember one night I woke up because I felt something sitting near the foot of our bed. You know how a mattress dips when someone sits down? That's exactly what it felt like. At first, I thought it was just one of the kids. I kept my eyes closed and said, "Go back to bed." No one answered. Then I felt the blanket slowly pull downward. I opened my eyes. At the foot of my bed, I could see a dark shape sitting there. It looked like a person with long hair hanging forward. It was not clear. It was just darker than the room. I tried to scream, but my body would not move. Sleep paralysis had happened to me before, but this time it felt different. Usually when I had sleep paralysis, I knew I was half asleep. This time I could hear my husband breathing next to me. I could hear the heater blowing. I could hear cars passing outside. I was awake. Then, the thing at the end of the bed started crying. It was quiet at first. Then it got louder, like it was right next to my ear even though it was still sitting there. I started praying in my head because I could not move my mouth. I started praying to my grandparents, to my ancestors, even to God to help me and to make it leave. Then, my husband suddenly sat up and turned on the lamp. The thing was gone. He looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" I started crying because I realized he heard it too. He told me he woke up because he heard a woman crying next to our bed. Then he felt someone touching his ankle, and that's why he turned on the light. The next morning, we took the kids to my mother-in-law's house and we talked with them about what had happened. We explained our story and they listened to us, and then they told us to not worry and that they will find a shaman to help us out. They told us that for now, to have the kids sleep in our room with us and to have a Hmong knife under our pillow to protect ourselves. My in-laws were able to find a shaman that lived in the next state over. My husband and I went with his parents to go and visit this shaman to ask him for some help. When we got there, I noticed the large shaman altar in his living room and all the stuff that were on it. We all started with small talk first and got to know each other, and then we started to dive into the problem. For a little bit, the shaman was quiet, thinking to himself, and then he asked us if we had gone to a funeral recently. We said yes, and that we had gone to a funeral and that we had encountered some strange things that happened there. He said that it must have been a wandering spirit that followed us home. He said that it was not trying to destroy the family, but that the spirit was confused and might have attached itself to our family. He said that sometimes spirits follow people who are sensitive, and he turned and looked at me and told me that I was one of those people. He said that my husband had a more stronger spirit, and so his spirit protected mine. But he said to not worry and that he will help us take care of this problem. My husband and I thanked him, and we set up an appointment for a weekend that we were free to do the ceremony. On the day of the ceremony, it was very busy. My husband and the guys had gone to go and butcher the pig, while me and the ladies and my mother-in-law were at home cooking and cleaning and getting the place ready. The shaman showed up to our house early that day and we welcomed him in. He performed his rituals for what seemed like almost the whole entire day. After that, me and the ladies set up the table for all the men to come and eat, and the shaman told us to not worry and that he was able to bargain with the spirit to leave us alone. He said that I am someone that has a very sensitive spirit and I have to be very careful when I go out to funerals or places that might have spirits like that. He tied a string to me and told me that I was to not go to places where there was death, places like the hospitals, the cemetery, or funerals for a certain amount of time. After that, we thanked the shaman and he went on his way home. Ever since then, we don't have those experiences anymore, and the spirit of that old lady doesn't show up in our house. Everything went back to normal. We don't hear any strange noises and sounds, but sometimes I feel like I just scare myself thinking about the past. But for now, I'll write down any stories and new experiences if anything else ever happens again. Sheesh, guys. Funeral homes, they are a little creepy, especially if you go to a new one and you don't know the layout of the place. It's a little bit freaky, at night, or if you stayed there, or if you have to sleep over there. That's when it's a little bit weird. But, typically as long as you just kind of mind your own business and make logical decisions, sorry, can't speak, then usually everybody's just fine. And the most important thing is that after the funerals, you have to do a thing called shutag, and that's basically after you go back home to the deceased and their families. People have to basically cleanse themselves with fire. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's a process that you do, and that basically gets rid of any negative attachments or spirits that decide to follow you home. And that might be the problem why these people who wrote these stories had those encounters, is because they didn't do that particular procedures. Now, Hmong funerals are just there's very complicated, and there's a lot of things that go on in there, but you just have to make logical decisions. You have to listen to what the elders tell you to not do and to do, and everything will be a-okay. Now, if any of you have any short encounters or experiences with these funeral homes or haunted funeral homes, let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you guys think about the video as well and the stories that I shared with you all today. And remember to leave a like and subscribe. I really need my adult beverages. And without further ado, I will see you all in the next video. Thank you all for watching.